Released originally the 1st of December of 2014 with only one teaser before the release, Five Nights at Treasure Island. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive on Five Nights at Treasure Island, one of the most influential and one of the first Five Nights at Freddy's fan games to exist. And we're going to be talking about why it's one of the best fan game series. Hello chat, today I'm gonna be talking about Five Nights at Treasure Island as I already mentioned. I'm planning to turn this into more of like a series, analyzing FNAF fan games and even the games of Five Nights at Freddy's, and we have 5 simple rules to analyze it, so let's get right into it. So first, the 5 rules that we're going to be using to rank all of the games, the 5 things that we're going to be talking about are going to be the story, the gameplay, the characters, the impact that this game had in the community, this will only apply for fan games, and the ambience of the game. With that said, let's take a deep dive on the fan game that started everything, the first Five Nights at Freddy's fan game. Released originally by Alight 1996 on December 1st of 2014, based on the creepypasta abandoned by Disney by Slime Beast, and one of the most influential fan games as I already said, also including an insane amount of builds, remasters, official and unofficial games, 6 remastered, 1 official build, 1 upcoming remastered, a ton of cancelled sequels, and an official sequel. The classic build was released by Alight in December 1st of 2014. It doesn't have much into it because it's only made of one night. Later, the 2nd of December of 2014, it was updated to have the second night. This was the first update to exist in the game. So first we are presented with the following characters: Photo Negative Mickey, that is going to be the main antagonist, Oswald, and Disembodied. The story for this game is basically non-existent at this point, but the little things that we know about the story of Five Nights of the classic build of Five Nights at Treasure Island is that we are Jake. He is an intern for an unnamed or agency at the time, and the enemies are suits, costumes, however you want to call it, and Jake is there to collect data for his agency. Now the gameplay is extremely simple. The good thing is that it's not a copy-paste of the Five Nights at Freddy's formula like we got to see in the fan games that existed during that time, but it's not the best gameplay to ever exist. It could be better. The classic build didn't age well, right? So the gameplay is basically just turning off the cameras for whenever one of the suits, costumes appears in your outfits. You just gotta lift up the cameras and click space in any camera for them to go away, because this will make a sound and the characters are just going away with the sound. They like the sound. One thing that I forgot to mention this detail, but the development story of this whole series, quite complicated. It's really big. It's crazy, the development story of Five Nights at Treasure Island. And for this classic build, it doesn't have much into it. It's just the original game released. Now the remaster 1.0. This remaster was released the 26th of January of 2015 with barely Photoshop cameras, and the update is basically like barely even Photoshop cameras. Since Alight wasn't so happy with the original release, he decided to barely Photoshop the cameras, and he added the Suicide Mouse Easter egg. In case you didn't know it, Suicide Mouse is another creepypasta. Now the character roster is almost the same. We have Photo Negative Mickey, Oswald, Disembodied, but this time we have Suicide Mouse too, which is an Easter egg. The story is basically the same. We don't know much about it. We know the exact same things that we know for the first original build, and it's sort of like a reskin of the original demo. The biggest difference that this remaster has is the gameplay. We have the original gameplay of just shutting down the cameras, but this time it was added hiding under the desk. That will not work fully with all the characters because this specific mechanic was intended to be for another character that was never included in this demo. Moving on to June 23rd of 2015, we have the remaster 2.0. This one was made by Anart Stella Wisp, also known as Subwoofer X3, and the Purity Sinners. Keep that name in mind because the Purity Sinners will be an important character in the future development of Treasure Island. Now with the characters, we already know the classics: Photo Negative Mickey, Oswald, and Disembodied, but this time we have the addition of Photo Negative Mickey and Acephalos. The story is the same, it's based on the same phone calls that we had from the previous releases, and that's basically it. Now there's something very important about the Remaster 2.0 because this is the breaking point for the Five Nights at Treasure Island series. Because after the original demo released for the Remaster 2.0, Anar loses all the motivation to continue making the game. So he decides to release all of the assets to the public so any fan would make their own fan game with their own release, their own build of the game. Moving on to the Remaster 3.0. Which is very known for the controversy that it has, and we'll be explaining that in a moment. The most noticeable differences between the Remaster 3.0 and all of the other versions is that it replaces Photo Negative Mickey with another antagonist called Willy. The gameplay is the same. We have the shutting down the cameras and hiding under the desk. The story it remains the same, but it adds a little bit. Here we have the official introduction of a character that's gonna be really important for all of the franchise, that's called Henry Miller. And we have the introduction of another antagonist that's called The Face. And this remaster also has the official release of the Pirate Caverns, a section that always comes after Night 3. As I already mentioned, this remastered is known for being very controversial. It's the most controversial remastered that Five Nights at Treasure Island has. This was because Purity Sina started having some beef with Slime Beast because she wanted to make merchandise of Five Nights at Treasure Island. That's why she replaced Photo Negative Mickey with Willy. So after that, Slime Beast got to know that she was using his creation to profit of it. There's a lot of things that came out in between this beef. Purity Scene making videos about Slime Beast, Slime Beast also making videos about Purity Scene, and at the end of the conflict, Slime Beast decided to put an end to the conflict because Purity Scene is, I think it was the cat, I think it was the cat, and the aunt had passed away sadly, rest in peace. Moving on to the Remaster 4.0. This remaster never got to see the light of day. This remaster was made by Blackout, also known as Nietzsche, a very controversial name in the FNAF community, and Stella Wisps. And this remaster doesn't have much. It was cancelled before even coming out, so it's just, we don't have much information about it. Moving on to October 28th of 2017, we have Remaster 5.0. This one was released by Anart and it was cancelled right after the alpha test. And it's just the exact same thing that we have. And this is, after this remaster, during 2019-2018, it was officially passed the license of Five Nights at Treasure Island to Radiance Team, the now owners of the Five Nights at Treasure Island series. This remaster was released the 28th of November of 2020 and was made by Radiance Team, this being the only official remaster to be complete.
You have one unheard message.
Hello? Jake? Hey there, this is Greg from the Supernatural Studies Association. I'm just leaving you a message to notify you that we have a position open that you might be interested in. A small one, but hey, it's intriguing nonetheless. Currently, my team is doing an investigation over at this abandoned island. You might be familiar with it. The locals refer to it as Treasure Island. We just need someone to look over the place for a few days and collect data for us while we get things ready over at base. Should be a simple task, an easy way to get credits too. Hopefully you're interested. Give me a call back as soon as possible. Bye.
Unlike the other games, the gameplay is actually very interesting. It's not just shutting down a camera for each character. During this game we have three main mechanics: shutting down the cameras, standing and staying still, and shutting down all the power in the office. For shutting down the camera is like the classic builds. You just gotta go into the cameras, choose the camera that you want to shut down, and press space. For shutting down all the power you have to click shift, and for staying completely still you just have to press Ctrl until the thread goes away. And I know that the game is not very known for having the most useful cameras, but there's gonna be a point in the game that the cameras are gonna be very crucial for you. The character roster had the biggest update out of all the remasters that we know so far. Here it is included characters that were discarded for the other remasters. We have the classic photo negative Mickey, the main antagonist, and there are some teasers that have some descriptions of each of the characters, so we'll be reading that now. Description: the first one we found. It's a Mickey Mouse character with inverted colors, made of an unnatural inky liquid. We'll be looking into it further. Behavior: the subject is mobile and interactive. In all cases, it remains docile when approached and prodded. This portion will be updated if that ever changes. As well, the subject can, to a certain degree, speak. We don't yet know how is this possible. The team will look into it more in the coming days. Careful analysis of the subject reveals that it has a deep understanding of its environment. Regardless of its perceptual inabilities, the subject easily navigates the building's rooms. Experiments: a test was conducted on the subject's hearing and vision. Upon waving in its face, it did not react or take any notice, which led us to believe that the subject has little to no vision. Its hearing, on the other hand, is very sharp. This subject will constantly follow loud sounds, calls, etc. It's possible the subject relies on its hearing to guide its movement. Note: everyone here at the SSA remembers their first encounter with the supernatural. This subject was mine. I don't know about anyone else, but I am drawn to these creatures, to this place. I have fallen in love with the SSA's work. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. I will find out more about these creatures, even if it kills me. Henry Miller, intern. The next antagonist or the next character that we have is Oswald. Subject number 2, Oswald. Description: we found this one soon after Mickey. It looks like the pre-Disney character Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. The subject has no arms, but otherwise has the same physical distortions as the subject number 1, being made of the same inky liquid. Behaviors: it behaves similar to subject 1, remaining docile while approached. One difference is that it lurks in the dark areas of the building. Like subject 1, this subject can speak, and does so more frequently. In our experience, it talks about an unknown female individual. The subject almost seems sad when it talks about her. Experiments: vision and hearing tests were also conducted on these subjects. Findings were the same as those of subject number 1. No further research is necessary. The next character that we encounter is disembodied. It's a Donald Duck head. Subject number 3, Donald Head. Description: this is the actual second one we found, if not the first, but someone decided to write it out of order. Anyways, the subject is a head of Donald Duck with blackout eyes. It has the same inky material as the previous subjects. This subject also has many thin legs that it uses to move. These are also made from the inky material. Behavior: as stated, it walks around on its legs, and it's docile like the previous subjects. Unlike the others though, this subject does not talk or make any noise. This subject has random bursts of speed and can move very quickly through some rooms. Most of the time it stays in place. Experiments: the same experiments that were conducted on the previous subjects were conducted on this one. Results are the same, no further research is necessary. Now for the next character we have Impurity. Impurity is a Minnie Mouse looking creature, and unlike the other three, this is sort of like her first appearance. The other appearances of Minnie Mouse being on this series, the other appearances of Minnie Mouse on this series is Photo Negative Minnie. Impurity was originally planned, if I'm not wrong, for the remaster 4.0, and since that remaster never came out, this is her first official appearance. Subject number 5, Minnie. Description: we found this subject for what would become subject 6. Its mouth hangs open and it has no eyes, much like our previous subjects. Behavior: we are partially unsure of how Minnie moves around. It will seemingly disappear at random and reappear in the mascot room. It otherwise moves around by walking or floating. It is docile like the rest. This subject talks very clearly. When it talks, it often questions its state of being and the way the other subjects are. When we tried talking to it, it told us that it liked our teeth. Experiments. Hearing and visual tests were conducted on these subjects. Results were the same as the first few subjects. No further research is necessary. The next character that we encounter is Acephalos, a character that appeared only in the Remaster 1.0 and, if I'm not wrong, the Remaster 2.0. Subject number 4. Headless Goofy. This subject is the body of a Goofy without a head. It has the same inky material as the previous subject. Behavior. This subject can walk around and it's docile like the other. Whenever the subject encounters us, it likes to follow us around the building but moves slowly. This subject talks very clearly. It often talks about getting revenge on an individual or questions why they did what they did. Experiments. The same tests that were conducted on the previous subjects were conducted on Goofy. This subject did not respond to the visual or hearing stimuli. Given that it followed us around the building, we knew it must have some method of understanding its environment, such as feeling movement through vibrations. When this was tested, we found out that it followed us when we moved and went away when we didn't. Notes. Perhaps there was a time when Goofy could see and hear, since we found a Goofy head made of the inky material in the meat freezer. If it was ever a part of this subject, we have no idea why it came off. The next character that we have is the best antagonist that could ever fucking exist in this franchise, and it's the Face. Trust me, the Face is amazing and he always comes back. Subject number 6. Distorted Mickey. Description. We found this one when investigating the noises in the vents. It is a legless Mickey Mouse character with heavily distorted face. Like the previous subjects, it has no eyes. Behavior. As you could guess, this subject tends to crawl through the ventilation. On occasion though, it will come down from the vents and crawl around the rooms. It is docile like the others. On one occasion, we believe the subject said something. We are unsure of what it said, but it had a raspy voice. The subject has not spoken since. Experiments. Hearing and visual tests were conducted on these subjects. Results were the same as the first few subjects. No further research is necessary. These first characters that I just talked about, they are the Toons. The main antagonist of the games are the Toons. Unlike the previous builds where there were suits, in this game the characters were all changed to be Toons. Now going into the humanoids of the game. We have Undying, which was originally planned to be a red man in the previous games. Undying was just meant to be a red man in the original versions of the game, and he never made the cut in the games. He was never able to appear in the other games due to the cancellations. And based on the story, we do not have the descriptions that I read before for all the other characters, since he doesn't appear during that point of the story where these descriptions were made. We will be explaining more about Undying's story in the story section. The next character that we have is, it's a known class, it's Mother. She's supposed to be the main villain of the game, but that's to the story section. Now for the Easter eggs, we have Mortimer, making again an appearance. Mortimer is supposed to be the remaster of Suicide Mouse, but this time with a new name. Another Easter egg that we have is the Forgotten One, that it's amazing. We love the Forgotten One. The Forgotten One is so underrated, it's such an underrated character. And we have Pluto. Now for the mechanics of each character, the shutting down the cameras will help you avoid photo negative Mickey, Oswald, and Impurity. Staying still will help you avoid Acephalos and Undying. And shutting down the lights will help you avoid the Face. And also shutting down the lights will help you save energy, because if you do not have energy, there's a 50-50 chance that you might get killed by one of the camera characters. So yeah, you need to save energy if you want to avoid all of the characters from the cameras. But there's a trick into the saving energy and turning off all the power. The thing is that when you turn off the power for so long, there's somebody that's gonna kill the power for you. You're not going to be able to turn it on again. So be careful with that. You cannot run out of power, and you cannot get anybody, I don't know who the fucking bitch is, that turns you the power off. You need to be careful with the power. And this applies for the main section of the game. There's another section in the game that's called the Pirate Caverns, and it works completely different. The Pirate Caverns, it's a point and click sort of like free roam game. The things that for the Pirate Caverns, you need to look for some things to enter some rooms. In the pirate caverns, there's two threats that you're going to face against, the face and undying. Unlike the mainline game mechanic of the face, you don't need to shut down the power because that's actually impossible in the pirate cavern sections. What the fuck did you think you could do? Go randomly to the office and shut down the power and then go back to avoid the face? No, you fucking stupid. The face, you just need to flash him in the pirate caverns, and that actually brought the theory that fans had that the face has a bad vision because of the player. And for undying, you need to follow the exact same mainline game mechanic, that is just staying completely still. Now we have the 5 nights that work perfectly fine. They work the exact same thing as the main gameplay, the cameras, the lights, and the staying still, but it gets progressively more aggressive. Progressively the characters get more aggressive. Then when you reach to night 6, there's a new threat that's coming to get you, and that cutie patootie that's going to get you is called Hourglass. That thing is a mix of all of the tunes that we already know, so he will mimic all of the mechanics from all of the characters in the game. And this is what I mean when I mentioned before that the cameras will have an extremely importance in this game, especially in this section. Because yeah, in the other nights you just need to shut them down, you don't even need to look at the cameras to know where the characters are. But here, the cameras are gonna be the most important thing to ever happen to you. Hourglass as a good final boss is extremely aggressive, and this is when the cameras bring out all of the importance that they have in this game. Depending on the camera that Hourglass starts, it will define the character that he is mimicking. So Hourglass has 3 starting points: the mascot prep, the storage area, the roof, oh I think that's 4, I'm sorry, and the bathroom. And most people will tell you that the best mechanic to beat up Hourglass is just to take a look at it's always being attentive to the cameras 3, 4, and 9, which is the starting point of the characters with the camera mechanic, but that actually doesn't work at all. That's a fucking lie, it won't fucking work. Trust me, I've tried it, it never works. The thing is that Hourglass is so aggressive that he doesn't even give you the chance to take a look at all of these cameras like at once. You need to be extremely fast to look at all of these cameras before he reaches your office. So the mechanic that I use is always checking the lounge. The only camera that you need active is the lounge. That is because the only characters that go through the lounge before reaching your office is Photo Negative Mickey, Impurity, and Oswald. So when he's mimicking one of these 3, he will go through the lounge. And if he's not mimicking one of these 3, he will not go through the lounge. If I'm not wrong, Hourglass has an 8-second counter, or like an 8-second reset timer. So during that 8 seconds, the best thing is that you shut down the power so you do not have to struggle with running out of battery later. Because with this little bitch, it's not gonna be, oh, 50-50. No. It's 100% you're dying if you don't have power. So be careful with your power. So sort of like a summary of the method that I use and the most, or as I consider it, the most effective method to use for Hourglass, because I already mentioned this guy is not going to give you any chance to check all of the cameras where all of the tunes started. Always have the launch camera on. If you get to turn off a camera and Hourglass does not go through the launch, it's mimicking a Cephalos. If Hourglass goes through the launch camera, it's mimicking either Impurities, Photo Negative Mickey, and Oswald's mechanic. That is just the same. They are just they shut down the cameras. Oh, and also the trick that people use for when a Hourglass is mimicking a Cephalos, because I think that's an error of programming, is just shutting down the power while staying still. And if Hourglass, you just any mechanic to just get him away, and he returns, I don't know, in less than 5 seconds, that means he's mimicking a Cephalos mechanic. So you need to go back and turn off the power and stay completely still. And that's all of the gameplay for the main part of the game. Once you complete the Hourglass night, you're gonna get unlocked the custom night mode that we'll be talking about later in a section that I forgot to mention before, and it's the extra section, like the extra content that the game brings you. Now that we talk about the gameplay and the characters, we're gonna be talking about the story of this game. So it's the year 2003. You play as Jake Smith, an intern of the Supernatural Studies Association, also known as the SSA. But before our protagonist enters into the story, we have other 3 characters that are Lisa Birch, Henry Miller, and Greg what? I could never mention his name. I think it's Greg McLogine. But these 3 characters are also a big part of the story, especially Henry. So before Jake gets into the island, there's these 3 characters that also start doing the investigation on the island previously. The notes that I read of the characters before were made by Henry Miller. All of the characters were doing just fine before there's an incident that takes place in the game. All of the characters were doing just fine, they were naive, they were not doing anything, none of the enemies were doing anything to the main characters, to the protagonist. But after a while, they start getting aggressive towards the humans of the game, especially towards Henry Miller. The thing is that during the investigation, Greg and Lisa, they have to return to the headquarters of the SSA, and so they leave Henry out there in the island by his own. They do this because they do not want to lose any information, they do not want to miss any information that they could have while they're gone. And during that time when Henry was alone at the island, he was attacked by the Toons, so he was hiding. Henry was hiding from the Toons before he was attacked, and while hiding he started recording some voice notes for the people who were outside that were not hiding to see if he could get any help. And when Lisa and Greg finished doing the things that they needed to do, organizing the things that they needed to do in the SSI quarters, Greg returns to the island to see that Henry is missing. After a while of searching, he finds the face with human eyes, something that unsettles him like a lot. And when he keeps looking and investigating into the thing because he wasn't 100% sure, he tried to be skeptical at first, to not trust his instincts. He has a little bit of hope that Henry is still alive, so he doesn't trust his instincts that the face has Henry's eyes. So he just keeps on investigating during that day to see if he can find Henry. But while he progresses, the other Toons, the other characters, the other enemies start having really human parts, body parts of humans, that actually starts being so weird for Greg. When he needed a confirmation that Henry is dead, that Henry is not here anymore, he finds Undying. And that's why I mentioned before that he doesn't have that notes explanation, unlike all of the other characters, because he is not a Toon. He is not the Mickey suit with the body of Henry inside. And so when Greg witnesses this, he just feels terrible. He starts feeling dizzy. He feels like he's about to vomit. When he goes back into the SSA quarters, there's these notes, that's sort of like notes that the characters have. There's the notes that wrote Lisa right after Greg returns to the SSA headquarters, in which she explains that he was looking extremely pale, extremely horrified from what he witnessed. And after almost giving up, there's when Jake enters to the scene. While Greg and Lisa were looking for an intern that could go and finish the studies that they were doing, that's when a university student, Jake Smith, sees the hiring posters, or I don't know if it's the posters or I don't fucking know. They were hiring, I don't know, through an educational program due to his lack of money. And he decides to take on the task to investigate the place for 6 nights, where it was supposed to be 5 nights before, but because Hourglass decided to come in because Mother was like, no, you're not coming out alive, and throws Hourglass into the mix, he has to stay 6 nights. And it's also because of Greg's fault. If you want honesty, they would all be alive if it wasn't because of Greg leaving Jake to stay on the island after night 5. During Jake's time on the island, he receives 3 phone calls. During the first night, he receives Greg's phone call giving a basic summary of what they know so far of the Toons. Later, he receives a call from Lisa, where she corrects some things that Greg said wrong, and adds a little bit more into the information that Jake had because Greg didn't give him the full information. Later on, as if you can recall it, I mentioned that Henry made some voice calls and they never saw the light of day. They did, but they did it in the worst time ever. The third phone call that we get is Henry's phone call, where he asks for help, something that arrives extremely late because he was already dead by the time where Jake receives that call, so yeah. So Jake follows Henry's instruction to get to the pirate caverns. He finds everything that happened in the pirate caverns. He found the room where Henry was locked in and he saw that fucking mess, so he was like, no, I'm leaving, and he left. The nights progress normally, and then the Hourglass night, and during the Hourglass night we get another phone call from Henry. During this call he explains us that he is still alive, that he is safe, which is not true because we get to see Undying trying to get us during the nights. But he was doing some investigations in the pirate caverns and he found a secret room, like a vault. He gave us the code to that vault. So he gives us the code to that vault so we can go and find out what's going inside of there, because he wasn't capable of doing so. So when the 6th night ends, we go back to the pirate caverns, but instead we go to look out for the code for the vault that Henry gave us. And when we enter the vault, we encounter Mother. And that's the story for 5 Nights at Treasure Island. The story of this game will be rewritten to match the Oblivious Casa version of the story because because in case you didn't know it, Oblidus Casa has it was sort of like a re-sequel. I don't know how it's that called. It was sort of like a retelling of the story while continuing the story that it was already done. Now let's talk about the extra section of this game. It comes with the usual custom night that every single fangame and fnaf game has. It also includes a complete version of the classic mode. A cool thing that the custom night has is that you need to unlock the characters if you want to play the full nightmare mode, the true nightmare mode. And so that's all of the content that we have for Five Nights at Treasure Island. That's all of the extra content that we have for Five Nights at Treasure Island. It's a pretty complete game, but if there's one thing that I believe that it has a little bit of flaws in it, is the story. With the original version released November 28th of 2022 and the update 2.0 released on September 29th of 2023. Also developed by Radiance Team, is the official sequel of Five Nights at Treasure Island, Oblidus Casa. Now the gameplay actually changes like a lot from the previous game. So in this game, our main antagonist, instead of being photo negative Mickey, is Willy. He returns to be the main antagonist in this game. Now the gameplay. The main mechanics of the game are playing some music box, flashing the camera, checking the attic, and using the lighter to avoid some of the characters. And the other mechanic of the attic is not using the lighter to avoid one of the characters, erasing on a notepad a drawing, and keeping one of the characters away from the window. And this character shares mechanic with another character. For the characters, we have Willy, Belial, Daisy, The Face, Photo Negative Mickey, Pete, DP, and Hourglass. We also do not have any phone calls to teach us how to play the game. So instead of having phone calls to teach us how to play the game, there's some text reading on the notepad. We don't know who wrote it, and that's another special detail for the story that's gonna be explained later. So the thing is that Willy and DP have the same mechanic, but at the same time is not the same mechanic. Why, you may ask? And that's when it comes to light what I already told you before, that DP needs to be far away from the window camera. The next mechanic is the flash. The flash is used for photo negative Minnie and Daisy. Daisy has the exact same role as Disembodied from the previous game. She's just gonna get into your office to make an extremely just a horrible amount of noise. If you see her in any of the cameras, you need to flash her. The other mechanic is the attic mechanic. For the face that returns here in the game, you need to light him whenever you see him. And when you get into the attic but instead you see Pete, you need to get out of the attic as fast as you can. You cannot stay in the attic if there's Pete in it. The last mechanic being the notepad mechanic. In the notepad, it's going to start materializing a drawing of Belial. So when the drawing starts materializing, you just need to erase it. And that's for the main game mode. So now we're gonna be talking about the other game mode, the tunnels. So for the tunnels mechanic, you need to get out of the tunnels. The thing is that to get out of tunnels, you need to look out for a key. But there's one thing that's gonna be avoiding you to get to that key, and that's Hourglass. So you need to take a look in each of the rooms that you're gonna find located around the tunnels to find that key. But Hourglass will be around lurking them. To avoid Hourglass, you need to, if you listen to him, you need to flash him and go straight to another direction, to go straight to the other direction where he is at. And the other game mode is the post-mortem. The post-mortem comes out when you get killed by any of the characters in the base game. When you get to the post-mortem, the idea is that you need to get 3 Mickey heads to go back into the gameplay where you died. But you need to be avoiding also the tunes from the previous games. Well, so we have Shade Photo Negative Mickey, Shade Oswald, Shade Impurity, Shade Donald, Shade Goofy, and Shade Hortensia. For Shade Photo Negative Mickey and Shade Oswald, you need to stop this toy, this plush that you're gonna get in your hand that's called your best friend. It's gonna appear like YBF. For Shade Impurity, you need to just avoid looking at her. She's gonna just appear in your office and she's gonna take down your cameras. And you need to like immediately get on the cameras again, so you avoid looking at her. For Shade Goofy, you just need to flash him in one of the doors that you get in the office. And the Hortensia mechanic is just you just need to be fast. You need to be And for the 5th night, you need to face against the main antagonist of this game, that's Mother. In this night 5, Mother is gonna turn into a physical form that it's gonna be called Mimic, and she's just gonna mimic all of the mechanics from her kids. And with that being said, we get into the hardest night of the game, night 5, and there's an extra night that's night 6, but we're not gonna be talking about it. I do not like the night 6. And this means that Mother is gonna have a really similar mechanic to Hourglass from the previous game. But unlike Hourglass, the way to detect which character is she mimicking is based on her eyes. The idea is to keep her the farthest away from the office for, I don't know, that's not an office, but the room that we're located in, sort of like an office. So if she has eyes, you need to flash her, and if she doesn't have eyes, you need to use the music box to keep her away from the office. And she's not gonna be the only threat during this night. To make it a little bit more complicated, there's gonna be the face. The face is returning here in this night too. The face mechanic is gonna be the same, you just need to flash him in the attic, but unlike the other nights, you need to flash him like 9 or 8 times. And that's not the only thing into the night, because when it reaches 3 AM, Mother is gonna become more aggressive than before. She's gonna take a new form, she's gonna be like in a second phase, and she's gonna be more aggressive, as I already mentioned. She's going to be fast as Oh, and I forgot to mention the mechanic of the notepad is still up here, and you cannot allow that drawing to fully complete, or else she's gonna kill you. And for the attic mechanic, you need to be extremely careful if you're going up to the attic. You cannot go to the attic if Mother is in there. If you feel there's something in the attic, you just need to take a look at the cameras to the closest camera where you left Mother. For example, if you leave her on the window camera, you need to check on the camera that's right next to the window to see if she went back or she went into the attic. And that's the base gameplay of Oblatus Casa. Now getting into the story of this game. It's been a year since the events that happened in Treasure Island. For this game, all of the characters from the previous game are actually dead. That means Henry, that we already know that he died in the previous game, Lisa and Greg are dead. But since Jake is the protagonist of this series, he survived. Somehow we never know how he survived, but he survived. So that means that the power of the script is on his side. So after Jake's encounter with Mother at the end of Five Nights at Treasure Island, he survives, he just passes out, and now he's locked in a cabin. And when he gets to this cabin, he needs to survive new antagonists, that being the ones that I already mentioned, the Willy, Photo Negative Mini, the Face, etc. The first 4 nights work as usual. Jake has to survive the enemies that he's going to face, and later he finds himself in the tunnels trying to escape it while escaping Hourglass. But during night 4, when he's in the tunnel section, he decides to burn a Hourglass once and for all. This decision made Mother furious because he burned her children. She confronts us about burning her children. She explains us that she is literally the island. She's the grass, she's the air, she's the sky, she's literally everything that's in the island. Mother explains us that the toons were never meant to harm us. They never meant any harm towards us, but they were scared and they were just curious about us, so that's why they never let us go. And the real deal is that they became aggressive after seeing the human behavior towards the island. And after seeing all of this chaos that was created, Mother decides to put on a stop on it, and she decides to take on her physical form, Mick. After reaching 6 AM, Mother decides to still be out there in her physical form, knowing damn well that she's gonna get harmed if she goes as her physical form in the sunlight because it's gonna burn her. So Mother decided to take the risk, and she was going to still catch us, but the sun saved us, leaving Mother to burn in the flames. After all the chaos that was night 5, we later wake up in a weird room with a guy in front of us. This humanoid is Henry. He reinforces the cycle thing that Mother was already hinting towards us. He also explains us that in every single cycle, he always got the worst part of it. So after seeing all this play out all the time, he got tired, so he decided he was gonna break out of the cycle and was going to help us, being the one that left us the notes on the notepad, which are the instructions that were given in each night. He also explains us that he took into a new body. He rebuilt himself, getting out of the costume that was trapping him, the costume being the Mickey costume that constitutes undying. So Henry explained us that Jake basically just broke the cycle, and he's thankful for that. And he says that he's going to miss us, but he's gonna go. And so that's all the story of Oblivious Casa. Now going into the extras, Oblivious Casa has far more extras than the previous game, not only including a custom night for the base game, that being the cabin, also including a custom night for the post-mortem game, also giving us some challenges with very iconic creepypastas that were planned for the original version of Five Nights at Treasure Island, giving you also the ability to play with challenges created by other players, also including a big extras menu with the option of rewatching all of the cutscenes that play during the game, being able to watch the characters, give a closer look to the characters, a little description of each character, having some behind the scenes and some unused content showing too, allowing us to watch the sketches of the beta versions of the characters, and a lot more. And so that's everything that we have for Oblivious Casa, being the biggest game of this series, taking in consideration fan games and all of the official past builds and remasters. Maybe the past builds of this game are not the best thing ever, but if there's one thing that we should all know, is that without Five Nights at Treasure Island, the fan game community would not be what it is right now. People tend to claim that Five Nights at Candy's is the game that started all of the fan games wave that we see right now. But being based on the facts and the impact that Five Nights at Treasure Island had in the community, we can tell that Five Nights at Treasure Island is the game that really started all of the fan games community that we know right now. We can tell that Five Nights at Treasure Island is an amazing game, with amazing gameplay, with a very original gameplay for the time, with iconic characters and maybe the story not being the exact same as Five Nights at Freddy's, with amazing graphics, a completely new gameplay, a lot of content that we can take from. A story, while not being the best story, is a really good story for the fan game it is. And this series being one of the most impactful fan game series to exist. In my opinion, this game deserves a 9 out of 10 rating. Five Nights at Treasure Island evokes a nostalgia in various players of the game that no other fan game can do.